All right, so here we go. Chapter 2, Part 3. Yesterday we read Lily went to the hospital where Rosalind was being kept because she got attacked by people at by the men at the jail, and she busted her out of the hospital. So now they just got outside, and we'll see where they go from there. Since you got everything else figured out, I guess you know where we're going, she said. And there was a tone in her voice. We're going to Highway 40 and thumb a ride to Tiburon, South Carolina. At least we're going to try. It took us the back way, cutting through the city park, down a little alley to Lancaster Street, then 3 blocks over to May Pond Road, where we slipped into the vacant lot behind Glenn's Grocery. We waded through Queen Anne's lace and thick-stalked purple flowers, into dragonflies and the smell of Carolina jasmine so thick I could almost see it circulating in the air like golden smoke. It's a lot of flowers. Queen Anne's lace is a type of flower, purple flowers, Carolina jasmine. They're walking through lots of flowers. She didn't ask me why we were going to Tiburon, and I didn't tell her. What she did ask was, when did you start saying shit bucket? I'd never resorted to bad language, though I had heard my share of it from T-Ray, or else read it in public restrooms. I'm 14 now. I guess I can say it if I want to. And I wanted to, right that minute. Shit bucket, I said. Shit bucket, hellfire, damnation, and son of a mother bitch, said Rosalind, laying into each word like it was sweet potatoes on her tongue. We stood on the side of Highway 41 in a patch of shade, provided by a faded billboard for Lucky Strike cigarettes. I stuck my thumb out while every car on the highway sped up the second they saw us. So keep in mind here, this was a different time. Now, hitchhiking looks different. It's much more dangerous. But back in this time, it was much more commonplace and hopefully, at least for them, more safe. Not something I would recommend doing today. A colored man driving a beat-up Chevy truck full of cantaloupes had mercy on us. I climbed in first and kept having to scoot over as Rosalind settled herself by the window. The man said he was on his way to visit his sister in Columbia, that he was taking the cantaloupes to the state farmers market. I told him I was going to Tiburon to visit my aunt, and Rosalind was coming to do housework for her. It sounded lame, but he accepted it. I can drop you 3 miles from Tiburon, he said. Sunset is the saddest light there is. We rode a long time in the glow of it, everything silent except for the crickets and the frogs who were revving up for twilight. I stared through the windshield as the burned lights took over the sky. The farmer flicked on the radio, and the Supremes blared through the truck cab with Baby, Baby, Where Did Our Love Go? There's nothing like a song about lost love to remind you how everything precious can slip from the hinges where you've hung it so careful. It's funny how songs can have that effect on us. I laid my head against Rosalind's arm. I wanted her to pat life back into place, but her hands lay still in her lap. 90 miles after we'd climbed into his truck, the farmer pulled off the road beside a sign that read Tiburon 3 miles and pointed left toward a road curving away into silvery darkness. Climbing out of the truck, Rosalind asked if we could have one of his cantaloupes for supper. Take yourself 2, he said. We waited till his taillights turned to specks no bigger than lightning bugs before we spoke or even moved. I was trying not to think how sad and lost we really were. I was not so sure it was an improvement over living with T-Ray or even life in prison. There wasn't a soul anywhere to help us. But still, I felt painfully alive, like every cell in my body had a little flame beside it, burning so brightly it hurt. At least we got a full moon, I told Rosalind. We started walking. If you think the country is quiet, you've never lived in it. Tree frogs alone make you wish for earplugs. We walked along, pretending it was a regular day. Rosalind said it looked like the farmer who'd driven us here had had a good crop of cantaloupes. I said it was amazing the mosquitoes weren't out. When we came to a bridge with water running beneath, we decided we would pick our way down to the creek bed and rest for the night. It was a different universe down there, the water shining with flecks of moving light and kudzu vines draped between the pine trees like giant hammocks. It reminded me of a Grimm Brothers forest, drawing up nervous feelings I used to get when I stepped into the pages of fairy tales where unthinkable things were likely. You just never knew. So Grimm Brothers and fairy tales. So the fairy tales we know today are a lot more happy than what they originally were when the Grimm Brothers wrote them. A lot of the, or many of the Disney movies that we watch today are based on the Grimm Brothers tales, like Cinderella, even, well, yeah. But a lot of them were told. Snow White is another one. But the Grimm Brothers tales do not have happy endings. So when she's saying that it reminded her of a Grimm Brothers forest, she's reminded of more scary things. Rosalind broke open the cantaloupes, pounding them against a creek stone. We ate them down to their skins, then scooped water into our hands and drank, not caring about algae or tadpoles or whether the cows used the creek for their toilet. Ew. Then we sat on the bank and looked at each other. I just want to know, of all the places on this earth, why you picked Turberon, Rosalind said. I've never even heard of it. Even though it was dark, I pulled the Black Mary picture out of my bag and handed it to her. It belonged to my mother. On the back, it says Turberon, South Carolina. Let me get this straight. You picked Turberon because your mother had a picture with that town written on the back? That's it? Well, think about it, I said. She must have been there sometime in her life or have owned this picture, and if she was, a person might remember her. You never know. Rosalind held it up to the moonlight to see it better. Who's this supposed to be? The Virgin Mary, I said. Well, if you ain't noticed, she's colored, said Rosalind, and I could tell it was having an effect on her by the way she kept gazing at it with her mouth parted. I could read her thought. If Jesus' mother is black, how come we only know about the white Mary? This would be like women finding out Jesus had a twin sister who'd gotten half God's genes but none the glory. She handed it back. I guess I can go to my grave now because I've seen it all. I pushed the picture down in my pocket. You know what T-Ray said about my mother? I asked, wanting finally to tell her what had happened. He said she left me and him way before she died, that she'd just come back for her things the day the accident happened. I waited for Rosalind to say how ridiculous that was, but she squinted straight ahead as if weighing the possibility. Well, it's not true, I said, my voice rising like something had seized it from below and was shoving it up into my throat. And if he thinks I'm going to believe that story, he has a hole in his so-called brain. He only made it up to punish me. I know he did. I could have added that mothers have instincts and hormones that prevent them from leaving their babies, that even pigs and opossums didn't leave their offspring. But Rosalind, having fully pondered the matter, said, You're probably right. Knowing your daddy, he could do a thing like that. And my mother could never do what he said she did, I added. I didn't know your mama, Rosalind said, but I used to see her from a distance sometimes when I came out of the orchard from picking. She'd be hanging clothes on the line or watering her plants, and you'd be right there beside her, playing. I only saw her one time when you weren't under her feet. I had no idea Rosalind had ever even seen my mother. I felt suddenly lightheaded, not knowing if it was from hunger or tiredness or this surprising piece of news. What was she doing the time you saw her alone? I asked. She was out behind the tractor shed, sitting on the ground, staring off at nothing. When we walked by, she didn't even notice us. I remember thinking she looked a little sad. Well, who wouldn't be sad living with T-Ray? I said. I saw the light bulb snap on in Rosalind's face, then the flash of recognition. Oh, she said. I get it. You ran off because of what your daddy said about your mother. Didn't have nothing to do with me in jail. And here you got me worrying myself sick about you running away and getting in trouble over me, and you would have run off anyway. Well, ain't it nice of you to fill me in? She poked out her lip and looked up toward the road, making me wonder if she was about to walk back the way we came. So what are you planning to do? She said. Go from town to town asking people about your mother? Is that your bright idea? If I needed somebody to criticize me around the clock, I would have brought T-Ray along, I shouted. And for your information, I don't exactly have a plan. Well, you sure had one back at the hospital coming in there saying we gonna do this and we gonna do that, and I'm supposed to follow you like a pet dog. You ain't act like you're my keeper, like I'm just some dumb girl you gonna save. Her eyes were hard and narrow. I rose to my feet. That's not fair! Anger sucked the air from my lungs. You meant well enough, and I'm glad to be away from there, but did you think once to ask me? She said. Well, you are dumb, I yelled. You have to be dumb to pour your snuff juice on those men's shoes like that, and then dumber not to say you're sorry if saying you're sorry will save your life. They were going to come back and kill you, or worse. I got you out of there, and this is how you thank me? Well, fine. I stripped off my keds, grabbed my bag, and waded into the creek. The coldness cut sharp circles around my calves. I didn't want to be on the same planet with her, much less the same side of the creek. You find your own way from now on, I yelled over my shoulder. On the opposite side, I plopped onto the mossy dirt. We stared across the water at each other. In the dark, she looked like a boulder shaped by 500 years of storms. I lay back and closed my eyes. In my dream, I was back on the peach farm, sitting out behind the tractor shed, and even though it was broad daylight, I could see a huge round moon in the sky. It looked so perfect up there. I gazed at it a while, then leaned against the shed and closed my eyes. Next, I heard a sound like ice breaking, and looking up, I saw the moon crack apart and start to fall. I had to run for my life. I woke with my chest hurting. I searched for the moon and found it all in one piece, still spilling light over the creek. I looked across the water for Rosaline. She was gone. My heart did flip-flops. Please, God, I didn't mean to treat her like a pet dog. I was trying to save her, that's all. Fumbling to get my shoes on, I felt the same old grief I'd known in church every single Mother's Day. Mother, forgive. Rosaline, where are you? I gathered up my bag and ran along the creek toward the bridge, hardly aware I was crying. Tripping over a dead limb, I sprawled through the darkness and didn't even bother to get up. I could picture Rosaline miles from here, tearing down the highway, mumbling, "Shit bucket, damn fool girl." Looking up, I noticed that the tree I'd fallen beneath was practically bald, only little bits of green here and there, and lots of gray moss dangling to the ground. Even in the dark, I could see that it was dying, and doing it alone in the middle of all these unconcerned pines. That was the absolute way of things. Loss takes up inside of everything sooner or later and eats right through it. Humming drifted out of the night. It wasn't a gospel tune exactly, but it carried all the personality of one. I followed the sound and found Rosaline in the middle of the creek, not a stitch of clothes on her body. Water beaded across her shoulders, shining like drops of milk, and her breasts swayed in the currents. It was the kind of vision you never really get over. I couldn't help it. I wanted to go and lick the milk beads from her shoulders. I opened my mouth. I wanted something. Something. I didn't know what. Mother, forgive. That's all I could feel. That old longing spread under me like a great lap, holding me tight. Off came my shoes, my shorts, my top. I hesitated with my underpants, but then worked them off too. The water felt like a glacier melting against my legs. I must have gasped at the iciness because Rosaline looked up and seeing me come naked through the water started to laugh. "Look at you strutting out here." I eased down beside her, suspending my breath at the water's sting. "I'm sorry," I said. "I know," she said. "Me too." She reached over and patted the roundness of my knee like it was biscuit dough. Thanks to the moon, I could see clear down to the creek bottom, all the way to the carpet of pebbles. I picked one up, reddish, round, a smooth water heart. I popped it in my mouth, sucking for whatever marrow was inside of it. Leaning back on my elbows, I slid down till the water sealed over my head. I held my breath and listened to the scratch of river against my ears, sinking as far as I could into that shimmering dark world. But I was thinking about a suitcase on the floor, about a face I could never quite see, about the sweet smell of cold cream. So this last scene here might be a little confusing to you, but what's really important to know is a lot of times in literature, water is used as a symbol. So it symbolizes more than what it's just saying, or it has deeper meaning to that. And in literature, a lot of times water, especially going into water and coming back out of water, symbols a type of purification or a baptism or a new beginning. So in this case, it is showing that it's a new beginning for both Lily and Rosaline. It's a fresh start, a clean start. And that is the end of chapter 2.